Good for the gym. Welcome back, everybody. New York State is about to go where no other state has gone yet. The state just reached a deal to expand a DNA tracking program, and that program will now track anyone who's convicted of crime, including misdemeanors. Currently, it tracks felons and then a selected number of misdemeanors. So the goal is to catch more criminals. New York's chief judge is Jonathan Lippman. He's been an advocate of this. It's nice to have you joining us. Why do you support this?
Well, I support it because I think this particular program in New York will cover both sides of this issue. DNA has a tremendous potential for capturing criminals, the bad guys, and also has a tremendous potential for exonerating the innocent. The deal that's been reached up in Albany really has a bill that covers both ends of this, and a lot of the language in the bill comes from our Judiciary Justice Task Force, which is a group of prosecutors, defense people, scientists, academics that are looking at, again, the unleashed potential of DNA.
There's now a long list of the misdemeanors that if you are convicted of this misdemeanor that you would now have to give a DNA sample. And I'll read you a short list from the really long list. Forgery, false advertising, if you're convicted of disrupting a religious service, if you're convicted of unlawful gratuities, I don't know what that is exactly. Is that bribery in some way or something like that? Yeah. Resisting arrest. If you're convicted of fortune telling, if you're convicted of writing a bad check, if you're convicted of rent gouging, you would also, and much more, the list really goes on, you would have to submit a DNA sample. No surprise that there are some critics to this who say that there are so many errors, or there can be errors in the DNA sampling, that it opens up even more chance for more errors.
Well, there were different views as to how many misdemeanors should be in this. What's interesting that there's a carve-out in the new bill for low-level marijuana possession that has to do with stop and frisk policies and making sure that those people who are stopped and frisked on the street do not have their DNA taken. So it's a very interesting little carve-out in a larger approach to all felonies and misdemeanors. And again, there have been different views as to how far to go on the misdemeanors.
So when the critics say, Jeff Toobin, that DNA sampling can be flawed, and that if you sort of increase the pool of people who are getting their DNA sampled, you sort of increase largely the number of people who have flawed DNA going through the courts. Is that true?
Well, I just don't buy that objection at all. I mean, one of the things I don't understand about the civil liberties objection to this is we, in the New York and elsewhere, we take fingerprints routinely. Absolutely. Misdemeanor, whatever. Fingerprints are much less reliable than DNA. Yeah. Isn't that right, Judge?
There's no question.
So why is it more of a civil liberties problem to use a more accurate technology rather than a less accurate technology?
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't take advantage of this new science. At the same time, I think we have to recognize that DNA opens all kinds of opportunities to remedy wrongful convictions of people who are innocent, which is the worst stain on the justice system. Why shouldn't we do both?
Wait, Hank's going to give the terrible arguments against it.
Here's a terrible argument against it. You ready?
We go to Hank for the terrible argument.
Terrible arguments right here. Come to me. I'll do that anytime you'd like. Judge, fingerprints, when you lock somebody up, you're a policeman, having been in that role, you fingerprint somebody, you wait for the prints to come back to identify, to make sure that's the person that it is, and to give the judge enough information with which to set bail, and to be sure there are no warrants outstanding. That's not what DNA is for. And the list of crimes that this could be used for, misdemeanors particularly, is awfully broad. Don't you think that's an infringement on people's civil liberties? It's one thing if you're looking for felony people. It's another thing if you're looking for a fortune teller. It seems to me that goes over the line a good deal.
I think I understand that perspective. My view is we should do everything we can to find the people who are guilty of crimes, because on the other side of it, if you exonerate one innocent person and you take off the street the person who's preying on the public, you're performing a great public service. So I agree with you. We have to be careful as to where this goes.
Big reach by government, Judge. Big reach by government.
Let's take a look at the numbers of people exonerated. They say have been able to identify with this database as it exists already. 12,000 suspects identified. There have been 2,800 convictions that are affiliated with this database, and 27 people exonerated because of this database is what is claimed. Do you expect a huge difference? I mean, if you open up the pool now to misdemeanors, you see a giant change?
I think there's going to be more matches, and that's what this is about. And what we've put into this bill, and a lot of it, again, comes from the recommendations of our task force, which is not Republican, not Democrat, but just wants to make the justice system, better in terms of what happens. What we put into this, after you plea, you need to be able to get access to DNA. You need to be able to compare your DNA to the DNA at the crime scene, and then the crime scene to the database. And when you hit these matches, you're going to have people who are innocent, exonerated of crimes, and you're going to take people off the streets who are free to, again, prey on the public, when in reality, the bottom line is the wrong person has been found to be guilty of a crime. And this is my main concern is eliminating this scourge of wrongful conviction, which is the one thing that undermines the justice system.
Judge Jonathan Lippman, nice to have you joining us here in our studio. We
My
appreciate your
pleasure.
time. Thank
Great
you.
to see you.
Ahead on Starting Point this morning.